Hello, are we ready to start? Good. I'm Marion Richards, Art Detective Manager for Art UK, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining this final session of Art UK's conference, Rediscovering Our Sculpture. This session will run from 3:50 until 4:50, after which there will be a 5-minute Q&A session. Before I introduce our speakers, I have a few housekeeping points. Questions for the speakers can be left via the Q&A button, and the chat function will be enabled as well during the conference. So questions will be put to the speakers at the end of the session, and you can answer those by typing as we go along, or you can wait until the end and we can ask them for you. Closed captions are available thanks to live captioning by stage text. A transcript will be available after the conference on request. Participants who want to see the captions should click on the CC button at the bottom of their screens. The session is being recorded and the video will be made available on Art UK's YouTube channel in due course. So this session is titled Sculpture in Sound and Vision. It looks at how film and audio can be used to create better access to sculpture for a range of audiences, including young people and people with sight impairments. The session will also consider a key example of sculpture that challenges the traditional parameters of a three-dimensional art form, exploring space through the use of sound. Our speakers today are Keith Alexander, Director of CultureStreet, Anna Fineman, Museums, Galleries and Heritage Programme Manager for VocalEyes, and Lucia Farinati, PhD candidate at Kingston School of Art. I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, Keith Alexander. CultureStreet, which develops learning resources for young people, is one of Art UK's Sculpture Project partners. You can find their films among the learning resources on Art UK's website. As the name suggests, CultureStreet is a one-stop destination for young people to learn about the arts, with channels dedicated to art, stage, museums and books. Keith is their director, and in 2008 he won a Children's Film and Television BAFTA for the visual arts site Artisan Cam. Keith's talk is about making films of sculptures with schools, so I'll hand you over now to Keith.
Thank you very much, Marion. As she said, I'm Keith Alexander. I'm the director of CultureStreet, which is a website which aims to encourage young people to learn about the arts and ultimately go on to a career in the creative industries. CultureStreet's role in the Art UK Sculpture Project has been to produce 60 films about sculpture and artists, and the same number of lesson plans associated with those films, all with the aim of increasing learning about sculpture. It was an ambitious target, but despite COVID-19 disrupting the last year pretty seriously, we've almost achieved that target. Young people under 16 are online a great deal, but actually they're a hard to reach audience. And our primary route to young people has always been through teachers and the adults who work with them. Having said that, we've tried to make resources that will appeal directly to young people. So for instance, there's no video over 4.5 minutes long because you'll just lose them. And the presenters are people like themselves. There are 25 films in which students review sculpture in public collections straight to camera. And there are 10 films about individual artists and their techniques that they use in their work. And finally, there's 25 films made by schools themselves about sculptures in their region under the 4-minute film challenge banner, for which we gave the groups a bursary and plenty of support. The aim of the review films was to give young people a voice. More than 12% of the UK population are under 16, but their views on art are very rarely heard. We wanted to give them the opportunity to learn about a wide variety of sculpture in public collections and enable them to express their views. I want to show you some examples of students expressing their views about sculpture and getting answers from curators. And so we're going to play a kind of show reel of a selection of a few of them. If we can play film 1, please. Sound, Julia.
Well, this is a lovely sculpture made by David Nash. It's called Multi-Cut Column, and it was made in the year 2000.
I wonder what the sculpture is meant to be. What was it made for?
I just want to know why it was made.
What was David Nash trying to achieve?
How did it get its name? What is holding it together?
Well, we don't know much at the moment, so we'll go and have a look and we'll investigate and we'll find out lots more about it.
Her sculptures are literally everywhere around the house.
This sculpture, called The Pagan, was influenced by Asia. Well, I kind of admire it because it's big and it has detail, but personally, I don't think I would like to have it in my own house. She owns a mansion, she has a gallery, she has everything an artist would want. It's not like you have a gallery inside your house.
This piece is called Typhoon and it has loads of details on the back.
Is she a good artist?
Yes, she's a fantastic artist.
Why?
Because she takes a lot of time on her work. If someone made me do this, I would give up, halfway through. But she just had the motivation to keep on going, and as you can see, it worked out.
She's girl power.
Martin Creed is an artist whose work is considered to be quite playful.
I'm 14, how is this artwork relevant to me? Why should I go to the art gallery and see a paper crunched up rather than seeing artwork that takes hours to make?
This work of art might have also taken hours and hours to make, but maybe those hours and hours have been thinking time about the reasons why you would crumple a piece of paper.
I don't really think it's traditional because obviously I've never really seen anything like it before. It doesn't determine if it's bad or good though. If everyone does like it, then obviously that's amazing and all that, and he's done a really good job at creating something that everyone will love. But at the same time, if something isn't as successful, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just necessarily means that it's not everyone's taste.
Attracts visitors because seen it on the motorway, the reflectiveness of it, its striking appearance.
And when it's lit up at night as well.
Yeah, people want to come visit.
I think it's a good thing that artists create sculptures which have such a big meaning behind it, so our generation can understand the pain and suffering that other people went through in our past, and we don't forget about it, because everything is forgotten very easily and we need reminders.
He wasn't a political artist certainly earlier on in his career. He tended to avoid direct involvement in politics. So this was a rare occurrence when he directly commented on contemporary events because he felt very strongly about things happening in Northern Ireland at the time.
This is a piece of sculpture by an artist called Lorna Graves.
I haven't got a bonny idea what this is.
A dog.
Thought that's got to be gold.
Could be a horse.
I think it looks like a fat greyhound.
You could raise a greyhound, but I don't think that sculpture's good at racing.
I think it looks a bit like a sheep.
Some kind of animal.
I'm Melanie Gardner and I'm one of the curators at Tully House Museum. Well, they are quite generic, so when you look at them they're very stylised. The animal form that appears in Lorna's work, it could be a cow, it could be a sheep. It's, I suppose, representing the sort of animals that you would see in the landscape today.
I've learnt that although David Nash only worked with wood, he used loads and loads of different techniques. He used axes, he used chainsaws to make the multi-cut column, and he burnt wood in such specific ways that it gives a different effect compared to any art I've ever seen. I just think it's incredible.
Why?
Because every day for 50 years he practiced and practiced and investigated new techniques that no artist had ever even dreamed of using.
I just think when you watch them again, I mean, that's obviously a very small selection for more than 100 hours of filming, but when I watch them again, I'm just amazed how eloquent most of them are, and then stark comparison to myself. At the beginning of the project, 25 films seemed an awful lot, but actually what it did was create a fantastic opportunity to showcase a wide range of venues, materials, styles of sculpture, and as a result now, the ultimate is that Art UK have a fantastic digital resource that covers everything from Edward Degas to Martin Creed. There's sculpture in a hospital stairwell that celebrates organ donation. There's a guardsman on the corner of the Wellington Memorial Hyde Park corner. As you saw, there's the scale of the Kelpies, that huge sculpture in Falkirk, and then there's that small ceramic figure in the Lorna Graves at Tully House in Cumbria. There's carving, there's casting, there's bronze, stone, glass, 3D printing, and papier-mâché. I mean, it's a huge range. And we work with primary age students, as you saw from the David Nash film, and then up to years 12 and 13. So there's a big age range for teachers to choose from as well. In the feedback, teachers said things like, the experience allowed me to see the potential of using film and media in the curriculum. Why they hadn't seen it before, I'm not quite sure. In terms of how teachers said they would use the resources in the classroom, one teacher said, I'll be able to use the film as part of my classroom teaching, as part of homework activity, and as part of an after-school activity. Well, that's everywhere really then, isn't it? What else is there? So it was a valuable experience for the young people who participated, but more importantly, a lasting catalogue of resources that hopefully will create conversations in classrooms for years to come. And I think that's what the films do. They trigger a conversation. The 10 artist films are about sculptural techniques, but they're also about why these people became artists and how their work has developed. We work with the Royal Society of Sculptors to help choose these artists. One of the big criteria for us was, are they good communicators? And I think that all of them were fantastic communicators. I want to show you as much as I can, but time pressures. So this is a short selection of a few of them, and telling you about what they do. If we can play film 2, please.
I'm a sculptor. Sometimes I call myself a metal worker because I'm a maker, really.
I start off with a log of wood and I remove the bark, then I draw onto the wood and then I start chipping away. Sometimes I use a small electric chainsaw.
me, using stone is the most wonderful tactile experience. You have the most wonderful feeling when you put a chisel in one hand and a mallet in the other, and you work on something that fights you back.
The best hours of my work is designing and carving. So at this stage I'm just rough carving, so I'm just taking initial shapes out. The first sheet of paper is like pancake making. It's never that good. Anyway, you rest it for a bit to drain the paper off, then you just upend it and couch it, and there you have a sheet of paper. So I will make a couple of hundred sheets, freeze them, and then make some more, and then when the freezer's full, I'll start working.
This piece is window 3, and it's the view from one of the homes that I've lived in over the past 3 years. And it's made using sheet glass, so the kind of glass that you'll find in your windows at home. So each individual line here is a layer of glass that's been cut flat, and then it's flipped up and fused together in a very hot kiln to make one solid object. So this is the type of kiln that I would use to fuse the work window in. So it would get cut on the water jet and then loaded into here, and you would heat up the work until it fuses, and then it then becomes one solid piece of work.
I carve with both hands so you can get all the angles that you need, which makes it easier when you're doing lots of curves.
Great stuff. When I went to art school, I wanted to be a painter, but they had a metal workshop in the art college, but they just let you play about on, and I was hooked. I just love working with metal.
I was always somebody's sister, somebody's wife, somebody's daughter. There wasn't usually very much of just who Dawn was in my life. When I found carving, I think it was a natural progression to make that part of my emotions, that of being a woman, being all these things.
I've always carved female figures because when I started making art, I didn't really know what to do, and then a good friend of mine said, you have to make work that you're passionate about. So the only thing I could think of was, I've always been feminist. I've always wanted to make my own choices in life and have the freedom to do that. But that hasn't been the case for millions and millions of women.
You know, I had a very good tutor in college. He became a good friend and introduced me to abstract steel sculpture, which I was passionate about. I kind of got it. It kind of clicked.
I like things to look pleasing. I don't particularly want to produce ugly work. I'm sure I could. I'm sure people say I have. I like to have a bit of humour in my work. I like to think somebody went in and went, "Oh, this is interesting," but I would like it also that they went in and said, "Yeah, it's pretty." No, I don't like ugly work.
And I think all the artists are inspirational and brilliant creative role models for children and young people. They were incredibly generous with their time and very enthusiastic about sharing their practice and their experience with children and young people. And thanks to all of them, really. The final part of what we did was the 4-minute film challenge, which was to get schools and other groups working with young people to make films about a sculpture in their region, as seen through the eyes of children and young people. We called this the 4-minute film challenge, partly because we didn't want the films to go on forever. Apart from that rule and the fact the films had to feature a publicly owned sculpture, the film could take whatever form they wanted, and they were really diverse. For some schools particularly, it became the focus of a whole term's work for a whole class. Others limited it to a selected group of students, and young people appeared in the films as well as operating the camera. Some of the films were funny, some serious, some had technical issues, some had copyright issues, even though we spent considerable time making online workshops, writing guidelines, getting them to sign agreements. One school still managed to send us a film with the theme from Chariots of Fire as part of the soundtrack. We've only limited time, but I really want to be able to show you one film. And this film is a particular favourite of mine. It's from a primary school in Tower Hamlets that had set up its own school arts council, as many primary schools do. They'd used the equipment they had, so there was no additional equipment, to collect stills and video, and they even made animation. They interviewed people and they researched the sculpture. In lots of ways, it's exactly what you would expect a primary school to do. And it really should be boring, but somehow it's a charm. It's got a charm that makes you interested. And I personally think that's down to the enthusiasm of the young people. I hope you agree with me. If we can play the third film, please, Julia, that would be great.
Henry Moore was one of the most important British artists of the 20th century and a really famous sculptor. His sculptures can be seen all over the world.
Moore was born in the Yorkshire, that's in the north of England, in 1898. After training to be a teacher and serving in the British Army, he studied at Leeds School of Art and then Royal College of Art.
Moore sculpted Drape-Seated Woman in 1957 to 1958. It's cast in bronze. There are actually 7 sculptures, all the same, but we are most interested in one of them, edition number 2.
Drape-Seated Woman was bought by the London County Council in 1962. Sculptures by leading artists were bought to go in housing estates, schools and other public places for the benefit of local people. Drape-Seated Woman by Henry Moore was placed in the Stifford Estate in Stepney. That's in Tower Hamlets, which is where our school is.
The sculpture was nicknamed Old Flow by residents of the estate and regarded as an important part of the local environment.
I live near Old Flow. Well, actually, I didn't live too near it, but as a young boy in the 1970s, I used to go wandering the streets all over Bethnal Green and Whitechapel and Brick Lane in the East End, so, I liked exploring with my friends. And one of the areas that I liked to go to was near Bethnal Green and on my way to Victoria Park, especially during the summer. And often we'd come across this old statue. I didn't know who it was, what it looked like, but it was an intriguing statue and I loved to climb on it.
In 1997, when the 3 tower blocks on Stifford Estate were due to be demolished, the sculpture was removed to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park to keep it safe. It stayed there on loan until 2017.
In 2015, the Mayor of Tower Hamlets, John Biggs, pledged to bring the sculpture back to the borough to be enjoyed by the local community again. In 2017, Canary Wharf was chosen to be the new home for Drape-Seated Woman by Henry Moore until 2022.
In 2022, the sculpture will be moving from Canary Wharf to a new home in Tower Hamlets. This might be the new town hall, as it has to be in a very special place because it is so valuable.
We love having Old Flow near our school. It makes us feel very proud to have an important piece of art in our community. We hope you will find the time to visit the sculpture yourselves.
Well, I hope that gave you a flavour of what we got up to as part of the Art UK Sculpture project. It's been a very enjoyable partnership with Art UK, and I think the new learning area will be a very significant and valuable resource for schools in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was a really fascinating talk about CultureStreet's work. I loved the films, and it was very heartening indeed to hear and see those children so engaged. I think we'll have questions later, but I'll move on now to our next speaker. Anna Fineman is our next speaker. Anna is Museums, Galleries and Heritage Programme Manager for VocalEyes. VocalEyes is another of Art UK's project partners, and it's a charity which gives blind and partially sighted people the best possible opportunities to experience and enjoy art and heritage. Anna herself has broad experience in the museum sector, having held posts at the V&A, the Royal Ballet School, the Arno Fini, and the University of Bristol Theatre Collection. Anna takes an audience-based approach, exploring creative ways to support broader access to museums and increase enjoyment of such sites and collections. Anna will be talking about access to sculpture through audio description. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Marion. Just going to share my screen. Okay. So yes, thank you, Marion. I'm really delighted to be part of the session today. As Marion said, I'm Anna Fineman. I'm the Museums, Galleries and Heritage Programme Manager for VocalEyes. And today I'm going to talk about access to sculpture through audio description. At VocalEyes, we believe blind and visually impaired people should have equality of opportunity to experience and enjoy arts and heritage. We're a charity receiving Arts Council England funding, and we work with museums and theatres across the UK to help improve accessibility for their audiences and visitors. I manage the museum programme, and the scope of venues that we work with across museums, galleries and heritage sites is incredibly broad. So to give you a sense of this, some recent project collaborators have included Kelvin Grove Art Gallery, the Charles Dickens Museum, Canterbury Cathedral and the National Gallery. So we work in a very bespoke way to meet the specific needs of each organisation and their visitors. And we've been delighted to be project partners for Art UK Sculpture and collaborators on this project for the past 4 years. Everyone has the right to participate in their cultural heritage and access the arts. But it can often surprise people that blind and visually impaired people visit or want to visit museums and engage with visual art collections. An element of this can be a misconception over sight levels. So sight loss is an extremely broad spectrum, and of those registered blind, only about 4% have no sight at all. Therefore, the majority of blind and visually impaired people will have a degree of vision or light perception. But furthermore, galleries are multisensory environments. We all experience them in a variety of ways other than visually. So people with sight loss can gain as much from galleries as non-blind people. However, access provision across the sector remains inconsistent, and barriers frequently restrict or prevent visits. So how can we help venues with sculpture collections to be more inclusive to blind and visually impaired people? Now, with sculpture, there can be a bit of an over-reliance on touch as deemed the best way for people with sight loss to engage with the artwork. And this can stem from a few assumptions. Firstly, that all blind and visually impaired people find touching sculpture useful and enjoyable, whereas actually many would prefer not to explore artwork in that way. There can be the preconception that blind and visually impaired people have no sight at all, and therefore the use of another sense is essential. Whereas, as I just mentioned, many visitors will have a degree of vision and may well prefer support with looking rather than touching. And importantly, there can be the misconception that from simply touching an artwork, a visitor can translate that to a visual picture, whereas it's just not necessarily the case that simply through touch, it's possible for somebody to then comprehend an artwork as a whole. So for touch to be useful for those who choose to use it, further support is required to guide the tactile experience and to help make sense of it. And the best way to achieve this is through audio description. And also, audio description can be used by itself by visitors to access artworks for those who choose not to use touch. So what is audio description? It is the principal means of bringing arts and heritage to life for blind and visually impaired people. It's the use of very precise language, logically structured to build a picture of an artwork or a gallery space. And this will be interwoven with contextual, historical and cultural information to tell a story and pose questions and essentially evoke a really lively sense of the artwork or the space. And this will all be achieved with a very concise number of words. It is quite a skill which professional audio describers will attest to. Audio description can be delivered live as an on-site tour or made available as a pre-recorded guide for visitors to use independently. And it can be used by itself or in conjunction with other forms of interpretation, such as alongside a tactile experience. To illustrate the different ways in which audio description can be used, I'm going to outline VocalEyes' involvement with Art UK Sculpture and the different projects we've undertaken over the past 4 years. So as partners of Art UK Sculpture, we worked with collections across the UK. We delivered visual awareness and audio description training courses. So firstly, a visual awareness course for the Art UK team, and this was delivered by describer trainer Ros Chalmers and visual awareness trainer Toby Davey. We then delivered audio description training for staff and volunteers at museums. And this was led by the describer trainer Claire LeMay and visual awareness trainer Kirin Saeed. And this involved 2 days of comprehensive audio description and visual awareness training to give the staff and volunteers at the venues the in-house skills to be able to deliver live, inclusive audio described tours for their visitors on an ongoing basis. We also ran accessible creative workshops at galleries for visitors with sight loss. Now, these were led by Sally Booth, who is one of our visual awareness trainers and also a practicing artist. And the sessions were supported by VocalEyes staff and the host gallery staff. And so these events involved the live audio description of the sculpture on display at the gallery, followed by a creative hands-on making session. And finally, we created recorded audio descriptions of highlight artworks. And the remainder of this talk is going to focus on this particular initiative. So we really wanted to ensure that our involvement with Art UK Sculpture was representative of the UK. So we worked with 25 different collections, one from each geographic region that Art UK works to co-produce a recorded audio description of a standout sculpture from their collection. And the aim here was really to forge connections between galleries and their local blind and visually impaired visitors. So essentially raising awareness within each party of the other. So we provided the collections with guidelines created by audio describer Andrew Holland and the VocalEyes team. Firstly, to help the collections choose which single sculpture to audio describe, a very difficult decision. So it needed to be a piece that was easily accessible to visitors. So considerations included choosing a work on long-term or permanent display. It needed to be an artwork with a clear physical route to it and ideally level access. And we also prompted to think about visibility, so how the work is lit and whereabouts it's displayed. For example, a small work displayed on the bottom shelf of a display case is not the most accessible piece, and therefore not the best contender for an audio description. So the guide then supported the collections in drafting an audio description. So we gave guidance in what to include within the description, what to exclude, very importantly, the ordering of the information given, and a suggested word length to create a user-friendly listening experience. And we then worked with each collection to hone and edit their scripts ahead of proceeding to professionally recording them with a wide range of voices to appropriately represent each of the regions. And the result is a really rich and diverse library of 25 tracks of incredible sculptures across regions, mediums, artists, timeframes, and methods of display. Now, the formal launch of these recordings is pending, hopefully very soon. However, each participating collection will have their track to host on their website. And as of today, the full set is available online at both the Art UK and VocalEyes websites. But just now, I'm pleased to be able to play you one of the tracks. So representing Yorkshire, this is a work from Sheffield Museums titled Eve by Edna Manley.
Sheffield Museums, Eve, 1929. Edna Manley, mahogany. This lifelike wooden sculpture of a nude female figure is slightly larger than life-size at about 2 meters tall. It stands in the centre of the 20th Century Gallery at Graves Gallery in Sheffield. Both the figure and shallow 15-centimetre plinth have been carved from one piece of rich, dark brown mahogany wood. The human form is smooth and highly polished, while the plinth is roughly carved and covered in chisel marks. The sculpture is very heavy, as it is a large piece of dense wood. It is a dominating presence in the space. The work is titled Eve and was carved by Edna Manley in 1929. The figure is curvaceous, a fluid, rounded form with simplified features. Her skin is smooth and muscle tone is evident. Eve's feet and legs face forwards, slightly parted, with a small bend at the knee. The top half of her body twists to the right as she looks back over her shoulder. This creates a subtle S shape to the piece. Her right arm is bent straight up from the elbow against her body, covering her right breast. The wrist is bent back, palm upwards, and fingers clasped into a fist resting against her collarbone. Her left arm hangs straight down, this hand also clenched against the inner left thigh. Her visible left collarbone forms the only sharp line of the piece. The curvature of her body is echoed in the sweep of her smooth, thick, mid-length hair, which hangs across her left shoulder, tapering across her chest. It frames her face almost like a headscarf. She has a prominent brow line and a long, straight nose. Her lips are slightly parted and her eyes are wide open. However, there is no discernible emotion in her face. The title of the work comes from the story of the first woman in the Bible. It has been suggested that she's looking back over her shoulder following her expulsion from the Garden of Eden, her fists clenched, attempting to protect her modesty. Edna Manley was a British sculptor of mixed British and white Jamaican heritage. She married her Jamaican cousin and moved to Jamaica in 1921, following the birth of her 2 children. She was trained in the neoclassical tradition and experimented with modernism during the 1920s and 1930s whilst finding her own style. There are very few pieces of her work found in public collections in the UK. Eve was presented to Graves Gallery by the Sheffield Society for the Encouragement of Art in 1937. It was initially displayed prominently on the staircase of the Library and Art Gallery building. Some people voiced objection to the nudity. The work now stands within a section of the gallery called Striking a Pose, People in 20th Century Art, surrounded by other sculpted and painted portraits.
So I hope you enjoyed that little taster. As I said, the full set is available on the Art UK website at artuk.org/learn/learning-resources, and you can find the audio description playlist. Or you can go to vocaleyes.co.uk/audio-clip/art-UK-sculpture. Now, I realise those web addresses are a little unwieldy, so rest assured, with the formal launch, both organisations will be doing a lot of promotion with easily clickable links. So hold on, that's coming soon.
Sheffield.
Now, what were the outcomes of the project? So this was a really excellent opportunity for VocalEyes to engage with a large number of diverse collections for the first time and to increase their skills and awareness through guidance in writing audio description. And it was an absolute pleasure working with these collections. They were all so responsive and receptive and enthusiastic to learn what audio description is and to better understand the needs of their visually impaired visitors. And I think they've produced brilliant work with these descriptions. For some, this project acted as a bit of a catalyst for them to further address and review access to their site and their collections. So the outcomes for museums and galleries are new skills for the staff in audio description, an increased awareness of visitor access needs, and an increased awareness of their local visually impaired audience. And the outcomes for visitors. So as we start to disseminate the tracks and share these playlists and these resources, we really hope visitors will have a raised awareness of their local gallery, what support is available for them and the accessible resources on offer. Visitors will be able to take a UK-wide virtual tour by listening to the full playlist of 25 tracks. And we really hope these tracks will act as gateways for people to then further explore each of the collections. And finally, we really hope people will be able to start planning some post-pandemic visits, that they'll be inspired to visit these venues in person and experience the works firsthand. So this compilation of recorded audio descriptions is both a legacy of the Art UK Sculpture project and a stimulus for venues and visitors alike to increase activity and engagement, further developing relationships between collections and audiences. Now, if you're interested to hear a little bit more about our work and our partnership with Art UK, we were the guests on Art UK's Art Matters podcast back in March 2019. But all the podcasts are available online, and it's episode 30. So I'll be really pleased to answer any questions at the end of this session. Otherwise, do feel free to contact me directly. So my email is anna@vocaleyes.co.uk, or you can find me on Twitter @AnnaFineman. Many thanks for listening.
Hello, and thank you very much, Anna. That was really a very, very interesting insight into the challenges of offering blind and partially sighted people a valuable and interesting and enjoyable experience when they go to a museum, gallery or heritage site. So I'm delighted to introduce our final speaker this afternoon, Lucia Farinati. Lucia is a London-based researcher, writer and curator. She is an independent researcher supported by the Paul Mellon Centre. And as part of her PhD, she completed a research project on Audio Arts magazine in collaboration with Tate Archive. Lucia has also curated a series of key exhibitions on William Furlong's sound works in Rome, Plymouth, London and Florence, and also collaborated with Furlong on two symposiums. Her research focuses on the role of listening in art, the history of the artist interview and performativity in the context of sound and feminist archives. So I look forward very much to hearing from Lucia now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marion, and thank you very much for inviting me here. I will share my screen now. Okay, so I think it should be okay. So the subject of my talk today is audio arts sound works, and is a case study that illustrates the relationship between sculpture and sound. So Audio Arts magazine, it was established in 1973 by British artist William Furlong and curator Barry Barker. And it was established as a magazine on contemporary art on cassette tape. Within this format, Furlong has explored the creative use of the audio space made available by technology, extending the traditional scope of an art magazine from the representation of artworks into a multifaceted art practice itself. It was a collaborative project run by a small editorial team, and William Furlong has been the main editor from 1973 to 2007. The magazine includes many recorded artist interviews and conversation, and so the artist's voice is really at the center stage here. However, Audio Arts also acted very much as an artist-run space, an audio technological space parallel to the gallery space. And it can be defined really a kind of curated audio space. The emphasis here is the production of original sound work for tape and not simply documentation of art event. In 2004, the archive of Audio Arts was purchased by the Tate, and includes all the master tape and record paper related to the production of the magazine. In 2013, all the published volume and supplement of the magazine was digitized and made accessible through this wonderful website. But William Furlong also said that audio arts was not meant to be an archive in itself. It's the archive, the result of the over 30 years of activities. So today I want to focus on a particular time of audio arts when Michael Archer joined audio arts as an editorial assistant, and together with William Furlong, they produced a series of site-specific projects, which include sound installation, LP record, radio performances, what I frame here as an expanded sculptural practice. The first opportunity to exhibit this work was the sculpture show at the Hayward Annual. The Arts Council touring exhibition that was staged at the Hayward Gallery and at the Serpentine Gallery. One of the selectors of the show was artist and sculptor Kate Blacker, who decided to invite audio arts along Tony Craig, Ian Hamilton Finlay, Richard Long, David Mack, Stephen Willett, and other artists. There was no such a rationale for this selection. However, Kate Blacker wrote in the catalogue, "I have included audio arts with which initially has nothing three-dimensional about it, but their inclusion, I feel, is essential for the further exploration of space through the use of sound." So the challenge of Kate Blacker was to think about beyond the parameter of a three-dimensional art form and address the current trends in sculpture at the time. The show presented, the piece presented by Audio Arts was titled Object and Spaces. It comprises three elements. The first element is a sound installation, as you see in this picture, three plinths located in the gallery space. And on top of the plinths, there were three tape recorders and headphone. And you could listen basically a tape that was created by Furlong and Archer through field recordings. The first part of the tape was focused on recording of inmates in the prison of Brixton in London, and I will play a little extract.
X-ray Hotel Victor, Yankee Golf Kilo 91 Sierra, 363 Papa Uniform Lima 989 Yankee.
My living space at the moment is a prison cell, which measures about 12 feet long by about 6 feet wide. It's possibly 8 feet high. Within that cell there are 3 beds, 3 cupboards within which to house one's personal possessions, 3 chairs, a table, 3 buckets which act as toilets when the cell is closed. All those objects take up something in the region of perhaps 60 of the 72 square feet available, leaving very little space to move around.
What you have just heard is an inmate of Brixton Prison describing the object in the space of the cell. Here, the idea of sculpture is reduced to the presence of objects in spaces and how people view and experience them. The second element of the show was a Flexi Disk that was produced and inserted in the catalog, like exhibition catalog. And the Flexi Disk included the recordings made in the prisons in Brixton, but also recordings that were sent to audio arts from different parts of the world. And I would like to play another extract here.
Brighton, the West Country, there is the emptiness, and within it are the sun I live near and the world I live on. Most of this world is covered with the living waters, but there are also land and air. On one spot of the land is a long fjord, miscalled the Hudson River. On a hill over it is a defrocked church. In the church is a ruined piano. This puzzles me. Just turning it into some sculpture work seems inadequate. Dick Higgins.
Okay, this is Vittorio Baroni from Italy, but, well, end of time.
I'm standing in Royal Avenue, which is one of the main business streets in Belfast. It runs north from City Hall to York Street. In Royal Avenue, there are 4 security barriers, 2 at either end of the street. Anyone entering Royal Avenue must go through one of those barriers and be searched. No matter how necessary, how thorough or cursory the search, security barrier is a daily reminder of breach in human trust here. This is Alistair McLennan in Belfast, and now over to an object and a space in Warsaw.
Sorry. Through the invitation to the sculpture show, Kat Blacker already considered audio arts as an art practice. Furthermore, she recognizes cultural dimension of sound as one important aspect of the new emergent contemporary art form, engaging with space as well as dialogue. This seemed a very unconventional choice at the time. But in which way the work, object, and spaces does challenge the traditional parameter of the 3-dimensional art form? In this piece, there are at least 3 kinds of spaces. The physical space of the gallery, where the sound object is presented, the audio technological space of the tape, and the space within which the tape is recorded. In other words, the acoustic space, as the recordings of audio arts were not studio recordings, but rather field recordings. What audio arts bring into focus here is how sound leads us an understanding of a specific location. The listening experience brings into focus the nature of the relationship between sight and sound. It suggests that they exist simultaneously, both as a social presence and as a private experience. Unlike the object qualities of sculpture, sound activates the space it inhabits. Sound draws attention to the space and the environment it exists in, and tends to create a kind of intimacy within space. The composer Schaeffer, R. Murray Schaeffer, said that hearing is a way of touching at a distance. And today we heard a lot of concept of sculpture in relation to touching. As Michael Archer in the essay Public and Private wrote, both the objects and the spaces of the work, since they exist for the audience only as sounds, are in many respects as impalpable and abstract as the ideas behind it, and yet their treatment is implacably physical. We have to remember that at that time, editing sound was a very physical activity because it was done through the real tape recorder. The very process of editing is analogous to that of the artist in the studio, cutting, selecting, splicing, adding, synthesizing, and repeating. After the objects and spaces presented at the Hayward Gallery, Audio Arts were commissioned many of the site-specific works. We don't have time here to hear of the extract, but I will just name them through the slides. In 1894, Aucha Gallery commissioned Audio Arts, and here the image of the sound installation. A record was produced by field recordings taken in two locations, Londonderry in Northern Ireland and Brixton again in London. A second commission was in 1987 for Interim Art Gallery, and again a record and a sound installation was produced through recording gathered in Broadway Market by Furlong. In 1987, Project UK commissioned Audio Arts Accent for a Start, and again here the image of the record and the sound installation, which comprises this time a series of performances involving students. The sixth works on the telephone was a National Garden Festival commission in 1986. And last but not least, Art Aris was commissioned by the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London as part of the Public Works program curated by James Linkwood, and it was staged at the St. James Church, Piccadilly, and again includes a performance and the production of a tape work. So from Objects and Spaces to Aris, Audio Arts had inhabited in the short span of 4 years a cultural context demarcated by a strong relationship with the field of sculpture. It also engaged with pioneering commissioning initiatives, which subsequently became leading organization in promoting public art, such as Art Angel, established in 1991, and Locus Plus, established in 1993. As Archer pointed out, in relation to these works, very often the pressure of the funding bodies determine the sphere of action possible within those public commissions, especially in the terms of their educational and outreach activity. While Audio Arts has often incorporated the collaboration with students in their work, the way in which Furlong and Archer responded to each commission was by connecting different places and people. Despite the political and social tension of the time between places such as Derry, Brixton, London's West End, and London East End, Audio Arts was able to map and sometimes to bridge the geographical, economic, and cultural boundaries embodied in those locations. This was not a strategy per se, but rather the consequence of being open and receptive to chance encounters, allowing people to say what they wanted to say in their own unique voices. Interaction and inclusivity, in this sense, interaction and inclusivity resulted in this sense a conscious process of engagement with casual passerby and their wider public, and the wider public. Although fleeting or precarious, participation was encouraged by asking straightforward, direct questions, welcoming everybody to speak into the mic. As Furlong remarked on many occasions, speech is the primary form of human communication. What Furlong, together with Archer, have mastered through this body of works is the ability to capture the singularity of voices in spaces, sonically framing diverse social contexts by using the microphone as an instrument. So in the 1990s, when Archer left, Furlong continued the activity of Audio Arts, the magazine, producing artist interviews, but also continued his activity as a sculptor. And here, and many commissions came from outdoor sculpture park, like, for example, Wall of Sound. I've chosen to present Obstacle Spacing today and the work in collaboration with Archer because it's the most overlooked history of audio art, especially because in recent survey exhibition about British art. And while copies of the records are at the Tate Archive, most of the original master tapes are still in the personal archive of Furlong, and therefore is quite fragile material. The question I have in relation to this work is an issue of definition, but also how to critically frame audio art sound works within the field of sculpture, and which kind of place they do occupy within British culture. Michael Archer wrote that continuity between the magazine and the artwork must be stressed. It will be, in fact, misleading to think that the production and the publication of the artist interviews and the sound works on the audio arts magazine was somehow separate from the artistic development of the project. The art critic Mel Goodin, that also was a former collaborator and interviewer for audio arts, framed audio arts in terms such as a social sculpture. It does see audio arts as a kind of social organism, a continuous work that contains many disparate components and which does not have a linear structure. It is open-ended and yet is holding a conceptual unity of purpose. And social sculpture, of course, is an idea and a practice of Joseph Beuys, who was recorded by Pollock in many occasions. Terms such as sound art in the 80s was not common terms. So we have actually to wait 20 years after the sculpture show for this medium sound to re-enter the gallery space, in this case, the Hayward Gallery. But Furlong was always been uncomfortable to be called a sound artist. He said, we don't call Lawrence Wiener a word artist. Yes, 1 minute. So I would like just to close by saying that in this context, perhaps we have to embrace the postmodern definition of sculpture as a expanded field, as Rosalind Krauss really illustrated in her essay, Sculpture in the Expanded Field. And here there is a study of Zetsin Cohen, which trying to read sound art through that kind of spectrum of terms. And in the specific context of British art, obviously we also go back to Richard Cork, a notorious lecturer at the Royal Academy in 1974, where he introduced the work of Gilbert and George. And so the cross-pollination between sculpture and performance in late conceptualism is key here in relation to audio arts. And I would like just to conclude by saying that audio arts, it can be defined as an expanded sculptural sonic practice, which bring together the discursive component of conceptual art, the physical and spatial presence of sound, and the performative and dialogic component of speech. In my PhD, I argue that its legacy lies at the intersection of sound art and sculpture, critical and curatorial practice, as well as oral history and oral history. So if people are curious to know more about it, there is a podcast in their research repository of Kingston, where there is an essay, an audio essay in conversation with Michael Archer, where you can actually hear more about those artwork that I presented here. Thank you. Sorry for stretching maybe 1-2 minutes over. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Thank you. That was a wonderful way to end our conference, our sculpture conference. And I would like to now, I think everybody should be able to be unmuted and seen while we have our, here we are, while we have our questions. Wait for everybody to come. Yeah. So we received some questions typed through the Q&A. I don't know if everybody can see these, but I think the first one has been answered. It was an anonymous attendee had asked, do you have any of these videos with audio description? For as a blind person, I would love to have a description of the statues they were talking about in those clips. And then I'm assuming it was it Keith who's posted the link to Art UK there? No. Anyway, but hopefully that has been answered, because they will be able to have that. Anyway, I will get in touch with them afterwards if need be. So Colin Simpson of the Williamson Art Gallery and Museum has written to ask, will the guidelines for writing our own audio descriptions be available, please? Anna.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. Yes, they're not just freely available at the moment, and that's really because it's quite a skill to develop the audio description skills. At the moment, we don't feel that simply from using the guidelines that we could confidently say that people would then have the skills to kind of give the best possible user experience. So what we're offering at the moment, it's actually a newly devised online training course in terms of how to script audio description. So it's kind of an online session first, and then the guidelines are provided. And then there's the opportunity to draft descriptions, which we can then sort of support further with and help edit as the process for the project I've talked about today. So it's just a bit more of a process, but please do get in touch, and I'd be happy to explain more about it.
Thank you, Anna. A question for Lucia from Simon Ray. Are there rules that decide when an audio recording becomes an artwork rather than, for example, a radio program? Is it that one is treated as a tape while the other is a broadcast?
Is a good question, because there is actually an art form called radio art. So, you know, the definition, I think, is, as I said, is open. It becomes difficult when those items, they have to enter a public collection, because when I entered the Audio Arts Archive, it was very difficult. I asked the same question: why certain items are in the archive, and why certain items are in an art collection? And so you start having all this conversation. There is no straightforward question. So we make those definitions. We art historians make the definition, and we to negotiate them also with the wider public. I think it's very interesting, the video that we saw today of children, and also the section earlier today about the public engagement, how actually the wider audience see artwork and then they like to define them. So I think I would like to keep open that definition.
Thank you, Lucia. There's a question which looks as if it is for Keith. Lynn Hilton has asked, what do the makers bring to the activity, which I assume refers to the sculptors, the film we saw of the sculptors.
I think the artists brought everything to the activity. I mean, they were, as I said in my presentation, they were very generous in sharing their time and their practice and telling us exactly how and why they made the work that they did. I mean, one of the interesting things was we asked pretty much every artist, what was your first recollection of making something, you know, and they went back to very early memories of making objects which turned out at the age of 4 or 5 or something, which turned out to be quite significant in their careers when you look back at what they did as a middle career artist. So I think without them there's no resource.
Fantastic. I've actually got a further question myself, please Keith, about that. Did any of the children in those sessions express an interest in following a career as a sculptor themselves?
I don't know about a career as a sculptor. They were, maybe some of them thought that they could be presenters. I think it's more attractive at the moment to be a presenter on TV than a sculptor. But what they gained was a lot of confidence from talking to camera and a lot of understanding from talking to the curators. The curators were fantastic with them as well, you know, in off camera as well as on camera. And no, I think they were more drawn to talking into a piece of glass than actually physically making something themselves.
Thank you. I don't think we have got any more questions that have come in. Do any of you have questions for one another before we end? All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much again, Lucia, Anna and Keith, for fascinating contributions to the sculpture conference today. And thank you again for attending. I'm not sure, I guess Art UK steps in at this point and ends the conference for us.
Thank you very much. It was a very privilege, and also to meet everybody and be in this wonderful panel.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you again.
Likewise, thank you very much.
So we leave now.
Hummus.